ready. We're recording. Are we good?
We're good.
So today on the main podcast, once again, I'm the host, Evan, Headstash 207, joined by my co-host, Carrie.
How you doing out there?
And today we have two special guests, both accompanying each other. They're kind of both on the same mission, I guess you could say, through different avenues, but they're both political activists. We're joined by John Morrison, the owner of Cure, and now running for
House
District,
seat in
District
District 60 in Lewiston, and then also Dawson Julia, who's a cannabis activist. We've had you on before.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Thanks for both of you for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So I think I don't know if Carrie wanted to dive in with anything right away, but something that I normally like to start out with is just going into like the background of kind of both of you. I know Dawson, we touched upon you last time on the first podcast, so we'll kind of go a little bit more into you, John. Just your background, the state of Maine, and and maybe the background in cannabis and stuff like that, and how you kind of, what has led you to the political path that you have now.
Sure, that'd be great. I moved here to Maine when I was like 14 years old, many years ago, and my folks bought a store, so on a lake, beautiful lake, Thompson Lake, and so I worked there for my young life, and then I headed out into the service, and then I got into the construction industry, and had a family, and ended up moving to Auburn back in '92, I think it was. So I've been part of the community for a while. And,
Yeah, you've been immersed here. You had a business. You have a business still.
Oh, yeah. We have two businesses. We have a construction business, general contracting, and we have a weatherization firm. And then, of course, we have Cure Cannabis in Auburn on Riverside Drive.
You guys were one of the first storefronts in the Lewiston, Auburn area, were you not?
Yes, we were. Yeah.
Was that in 16 or 17?
Yeah, I think it was 17. And I think at the time there was maybe 3, besides the dispensary.
Like Cure Leaf or
Yeah, it used
whatever
to
it
be.
might have been called at the time. I even forgot what it was before that. But yeah, still one large entity.
Right.
Yeah, it was getting it.
Remedy,
You've lived
it was
in Lewiston for coming on 30 years or so?
Yeah, just about 30 years, yeah. I've spent a little bit of time, like 5 or 6 years in Auburn, and I've been in Lewiston ever since. Yeah, I love it here. I love the people. I've been involved in quite a bit of the fundraising for certain things and stuff, and
You've been very active in the community. So going into politics is a direction that just made sense. Timely for this year. I want to say back in January, February of this year, we were talking because I was over at Cure for a little while. You said you were thinking about getting into the political playing ground.
right.
What was your motivation then? What were you thinking?
Well, it's kind of funny because some friends and I were out having breakfast, and I had some free time, so we were just hanging out, and like 3 hours went by. And in 3 hours, all we did was complain about the way things are being run, the way, how they screwed up the cannabis industry, how the states, the inadequate services for people, and, in the whole...
People in the community who are not as well off or
right,
dependent,
people
city
in need.
dependent, state dependent.
People in need, and how there's a culture now of just dislike and hate. I should say it is hate. People hate people that are, it's easy to kick somebody when they're down, unfortunately. And until we get back on track the way we used to be, we need people up there that are going to, and stop the us and them thing and be more us. It's the sides of the line in the sand is drawn too deep.
Yeah, it's either you have to be on one side or the other.
Right.
And you're not that kind of person. You're kind of more in the middle leaning or more moderate.
Yeah, I'm very moderate. As a Republican, people actually, I get a lot of support from Democrats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Well, you've made many friends in the community anyways, have you not? So,
Yeah,
I mean, you're
yeah,
going to, if one of the things I think you have to be is you have to be good business minded first and foremost. And,
Right.
And you've been around, you've been active part and done a lot of residential as well as commercial work.
Yep.
I mean, you don't do that for a long period of time if you're not an honorable person or good to work with or
Well, you know how to work with people, too.
You have
That's
to.
the biggest thing.
Well, you check a lot of boxes, I think, honestly, too. Just at a quick glance here, your Facebook page, obviously, like you're a Republican, you own quite a few businesses. You're also, but you're heavy into donating into, kind of like the poor and the needy. You've clearly helped with a lot of that soup kitchen and that food pantry that I definitely want to touch upon also in a little bit. also too, you've been really big about promoting absentee ballots and stuff like that. So I think you're pushing a lot of things on both platforms, which makes you a really desirable candidate, especially in a time right now where everything's so polarized. It's like, if you believe in this, you can't believe in that. So it's good. And I think it's a good representation of the people of Maine, because that's kind of how the people of Maine are. Even in polarizing times, we still have we still share some common goals and some
Right. I mean, the state of Maine is
ethics,
just a giant family if you break it down. I mean, they help everybody out, and they're different from the rest of the state.
Somebody who's
the rest of the country.
So Dawson, how'd you guys end up meeting? Who reached out to who, and how long has it been that you guys have known each other? Has it been since you got involved in cannabis, John?
I think
I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think it kind of started when we started suing the state. So
Hey, I can get behind
That's
that.
another check I sent. That's what I get.
yes. It was like I don't know. Whenever this lawsuit thing started, I kind of jumped on Instagram and everything kind of took off all at once, and that's kind of when I met up with Cured Cannabis and John and his son and it just was, when I found out he was running for House, I was like, oh, this is a dream come true. It's something much needed. My wife ran for Senate a couple years ago, and we tried to do it, but it was a really strong seat that was tough to beat.
The incumbent had been there quite a while.
Yeah, it's a lot of work running for office. I can definitely vouch for that.
So
it's a full-time job.
So for someone listening that may say well, what is this? Why is this important? Or what is this relative to me? Can you tell what is being in the House District 60? What impact and what change can you make for people? And why is it important that someone goes out and even pays attention to who's on that ballot? Especially in a year where everyone seems to just be concerned about who's going to be the president.
Right. Well, I think that, like I said, the biggest problem that they have up there is that there's such a dividing line. And one thing I've learned, in business in the 30-some-odd years I've been doing is that people have to have a vested interest. Your employees, they need to have some type of control. They need to be able to have their voices heard. They need to show their ideas. And, there's no such thing as a bad idea. There's bad parts of ideas, but there's not a bad idea. So until we send people up to Augusta that are willing to reach across the aisle and say, well, I don't agree with this part of your idea, but I like this part, and put it all together, and then everybody's got a vested interest. Everybody feels like they're being respected and they're going to actually make a difference. And I think that's one of the biggest downfalls of the political scene in Augusta right now, is that it's just, like I said, my way or the highway. That's it. Every party has a predetermined opinion, and you have to just march to that tune. If not, you're in trouble up there. And I know people that are up there now, and they're like, well, you got to be careful. If you get elected and you go up there, you want to rock the boat. And I said, well, that's the first thing I want to do. And in a nice way. Not, I'm not going to go up there and insult people like they do, and drag people through the dirt and come up with petty things and stuff. But just, do it in an honorable and respectful way, and just say, hey, come on, let's get together. We're working for the people of the state of Maine. We're not working for big business.
I think that gets lost, doesn't it? Especially with incumbency, where we start turning towards 8 to 10 plus years of being in the same position, or probably not in the same position. You've probably elevated in politics because that's the path that's taken you down. You deal with people up on the Augusta scene a lot, Dawson.
Yeah, I do.
How many have been there for forever, it feels like?
Well, there's John Martin. He's got the world's record, I think. He's been there for literally 45 years.
Wow, I didn't know John was still. I don't know why I didn't know that.
He's the king of the hill, you could say. I mean, he doesn't really hold a huge.
He was when I was young.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think
holy shit.
I think our grandparents had him as a senator or something. But yeah, they have term limits in Augusta. And it's an 8-year term. Well, it's you get a 2-year term, and you can do that 4 times in a row. And once you hit that 8th year, you're termed out. But the trick is once you term out of the House, you plan it mathematically so that the Senate seat, you jump into that one next. Then you ride that for 8 years. Then you go back to the House for 8 years, and you do that. Mm-hmm. And John Martin's done it, I don't know how many times, but there's a lot of that going on. And, going back to why is it important to get John elected in District 60 in Lewiston is...
John Morrison.
John Morrison, of course, yes. Not John Martin. Thank you for clearing that. Yeah, John's been around enough times. He needs to retire. But we need John Morrison in District 60 because I'll tell you, like when I first started to go into Augusta in 2013 or so, I was naive. I thought that, they were going to listen to the people and, we just have to go down and explain things to them. And I was sadly mistaken when I figured out. It took me a couple of years to figure out how much power these lobbyists have down there. And it's just stupid because it makes no sense. They ask for the stupidest stuff and they just get it served to them. And so it took me like years to figure out, what's the motive behind this? Are they getting paid off, or is this like a political campaign thing, or what in the hell? And there's so much of this going on right here in Maine. I thought this was like DC stuff that happened, and you watch on the news with all the polarization and stuff, but it's going on right here in Maine. Right. And these guys have infiltrated, and it's hard to find a politician that will run for the people. And I mean that. I mean, like, there's so many politicians that they start off with good intentions, and then what happens is they get in there and they get a taste of the fame and they get a taste of the, holy crap, I got power and my votes, everybody's bugging me to vote whichever way. And then it gets to them, and the next thing you know, they want to be the commissioner of DHHS or something, or they want to do this or do that. And they got a lifetime career in looking out for what's best for their needs and getting paid at the same time. And meanwhile, people are not getting represented well because they're not looking out for our best interests. They're going to the lobbyists and the people that are going to have their future career in mind for them. And that's what it is. It's a career move. And we got to find more people that are genuine, that are going in there to look after the people and fix things, and they're hard to find, but every now and then you get them in Maine, in Augusta, and it's awesome because they're the ones that will listen to you. They're the ones that will file the motion to change the bills and write the amendments.
It's about identifying allies, isn't it?
It really is.
And so in a sense, like a lot of other marijuana, and I don't want to just be specific on cannabis, but we're talking about that right now and how it's affecting Maine. A lot of other states that have already had a medical program and are into rec are starting to fight a lot harder to get representation on their state level, knowing that's where the full impact is going to be. Federal has sort of left it alone as much as I think we're all happy with, for the most part,
Yeah.
Well, the thing they have to take in consideration is the tax revenue that we're generating for the state. What are we at, 120 million?
There was 111 million in sales for the medical cannabis program last year, and I think it's going to be, double that at least.
At least, because our sales have doubled, so at the store,
Yeah.
so there goes the tax. But and now we're forced to be reckoned with. They're going to have to start paying attention to the cannabis industry because, we're bringing in more tax money. We're bringing in blueberries, the clamming industry. I mean, we're in the top 2, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But are they going to recognize it and respect it, or are they going to expose
Well,
it?
if they send people up there like myself that are going to go up there and fight and say, listen, you're going to have to start paying attention to these people. These are constituents. These are people that are generating a huge amount of income for the state. It's time that they get the respect. Everybody, other than the dispensaries that are funded by all out-of-state people and millionaires and whatnot, that $120 million was generated by people like myself and my son that laid in bed at night worrying about how we're going to pay the light bill, how we're going to get this done. And at the beginning of all of this, we put our life savings and 80-hour weeks into getting a business started. And then now the big companies want to come in and just sweep us under the rug and say, no, that thanks for all the heavy lifting, but we'll take it from here.
Yeah, and it's really important that people understand this is a huge year for us. For anybody who has anything to do with cannabis, this and next year is a make it or break it year for the little guys, because what's going on is for the last 10 years, the medical program has had some sort of protections, let's say, because there was a limit of 8 dispensary licenses.
Yep.
And then there was this non-profit thing that went on for like 8 years in our program. Dispensaries had to be registered as non-profit. They had to be residents of Maine. They had to be, there was all these catches to keep those guys tame and not let them turn into these giant Wall Street conglomerations like what's...
Yeah, sure.
And those guys are coming now. That's what's going on. The gloves are off. We don't have those protections. We're fighting in court right now for this residency law, but there's no more of this non-profit stuff. There's no more limitation of licenses. There's no more let's face it, full-time corruption's coming, and they're bringing in huge
Floodgates
money.
were open.
Right.
Allowed to open.
So they're going to lobby harder than ever this year because they're going to want to make radical changes. And those radical changes are going to be to shut down the little guys any way possible through regulations, restrictions, fees, fines, taxes, you name it. So we got to balance this shit.
How many other representatives are there that have taken an open stance on pro-cannabis? Have you had any kind of data or any kind of numbers like that, Dawson?
What it comes down to is who's sitting on the committees. And this is another reason why John Morrison is perfect for District 60 in Lewiston, because he's a veteran. He owns a cannabis store, cannabis business, and he fits perfectly for the VLA committee. And the VLA, Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, that is the committee that has oversight of the adult use program. So John gets in. Hopefully he can get that seat, and then that's going to be a game changer for us because that committee dictates a lot of what the House votes for. They make the final changes. Almost normally, that's how it works, and then goes to the House for a vote, and then the Senate for a vote, and then the governor's desk. So, John can be there looking after us, making sure they don't slip stuff in. That's
the other thing you brought up
too.
too was that there's a lot of lobbyists that are on these committees. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's troubling it to me is when we want to sue somebody, like they tried to sue the people, and the district attorney says, well, we don't want to spend the money to do that. We're just going to let it slide. They're just the constant rule bending to the big guys.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
It's
don't you think?
ridiculous, yeah, because we have a marijuana advisory commission right now that was put together through the adult use bill.
OMP? Is that what you're recognizing, or no? Is it a sub of OMP?
It's a branch of the legislative. It's a subcommittee, I guess, is what you'd call it. So the governor appoints some of these people. The president of the Senate appoints some of them. The Speaker of the House appoints some of them, and everybody is recognized. Like we're supposed to have an expert in the industry for drug abuse, and so we're supposed to have 2 senators are supposed to be in this committee and 2 reps. Well, we were supposed to have 4 main people. 2 that were supposed to be directly in the industry. Mm-hmm. And 2 that were supposed to be citizens of the public was the definition they said. In those 4 spots, we got 3 lobbyists that represent pretty much big cannabis, and then we got 1 guy that works for a big dispensary, one of the 8 dispensary licenses. So there's not one caregiver on that commission. There's no patients.
Medical.
There's no nothing. Yeah, there's
nothing local.
And they screwed us. And we made it very loud and clear when they were getting ready to appoint these people. Hey, make sure you get some of us little guys in there. We made them know that we were watching. And then when they appointed all the lobbyists, we freaked out. We went down to Augusta and protested and brought signs with us. And so instead of them working with us, they sent down the Capitol Police to look over us in the hallway. It was so stupid. And I really, it's another one of those
more
ugly...
as a deterrent intimidation type of thing?
I guess so. I guess they did.
This is as far as it goes?
I sent an email 3 weeks before the protest. To the Speaker of the House and said, let's figure this out because we don't want to have to come down and protest. Let's figure out a way to add some more people or do something or remove somebody. And I got
was Speaker
crickets
of the
back.
House at the time Sarah Gideon?
It
was, right?
I'm not gonna lie,
it
was. And I lost
I
lost a lot of respect for her because rather than answering my emails and saying, "Yeah, let's sit down and talk about it," I'm assuming it was her who sent down the Capitol Police to oversee our protest and make us feel like somehow we were doing something wrong when we were calling them out and they needed to be called out.
Had you had dialogue? Had you had dialogue with Sarah before that?
With other bills.
With other bills, right.
Yeah. She's been, and the other bill I had discussions with her about was the transplant bill for, they weren't allowed, the main hospitals weren't allowing people who needed organ transplants that were medical marijuana patients. They wouldn't put them on the waiting list and they wouldn't allow them to get organ transplants. So we had to make a bill and fight for it and everything. And it came down to, Sarah Gideon had to help push for it along. It was
Oh,
it was
wow.
a big battle because the pharmaceuticals are in bed with the hospitals. They both do their dirty work together in Augusta. So
Right.
when one side needs something, they go to the other side and they both team up. And they were fighting hard because they did not want to have to give in, and we won. We won. Woo!
Yep, you're going to win some battles. You're gonna have some difficulty and lose some battles. The I think the thing that we're hoping for is that we can at least have a fair fight to a certain degree if we have representation up on the state.
Right,
level.
that's key.
That's what you're looking to do, John. Impact,
Right.
be the ear, like you were mentioning as
Right,
well.
right. You can't have people on the outside looking in. You have to have people on the inside. You know, instead of Dawson having to call up or send an email to somebody, we need to have people in there to represent the cannabis industry.
Would you
That
be
it's
able
a phone call
to?
away.
So that committee you were citing, Dawson, is governor appointed positions.
Some of it is governor, some of it is from the president of the Senate, some of it is from the Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House.
So we're
So
going
they
to
all
have
kind of put people in who they have some
Exactly.
input. Yeah.
Now
So
they're
is that a position, John, you'd be hoping to, if
Yes,
elected,
oh, yeah.
get into
yeah,
that?
That's one of my first pieces.
And the person there's going to be an opening in that commission because Justin Chenette, who's the senator that chairs that commission, he's not running for re-election. So they're going to need a new senator, and I almost think there's a representative that might need to be replaced too because they're terming out. So there's going to be some
Opportunity.
changes, and we're going to try to write a bill. We'll see what happens. We're going to write a bill that says no lobbyists, and it has to be specifically this, or this. So basically, remove anybody that doesn't qualify and reappoint new people. So we're going to try to kick them out through a bill, and we'll see what happens. I almost think the committee is going to go with it because a lot. Right now, the VLA committee and the DHHS committee, which does the medical.
VLA, I'm sorry.
VLA does the adult use. DHHS does medical. And we got a lot of friends on both those committees right now. They've heard enough. They've seen enough. The problem is the VLA is getting 75 to 80% or whatever of their members are terming out or going on to do something else. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be a new mix-up in the adult use. And that's where the big problems are going to come in. That's where the big money with the lobbyists. So we got to have John Morrison in the VLA.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's embarrassing that they would actually even appoint lobbyists. It's like the foxes watching the hen house. I mean, it's a
trap.
mind-blowing.
Yeah, there's
to me.
selections.
Why would you even?
There's
It doesn't
selections.
even make sense.
Yeah.
You know, it seems
perhaps
like,
that's how,
seems illegal to me. I mean, it really does.
It goes back to the whole thing where, it's like DC, It's
Right.
like totally it's bought and paid for, and it's really disgusting to see this going down. And, I mean, my house is 15 minutes away from Augusta, and
Right.
it's good because I can go down there a lot, but I'll tell you what, man, you lose a lot of respect for your country and your government when you see this nasty. We've been bought and paid for by a bunch of lobbyists on every friggin' level.
It is kind of
and it's
sad
every
too,
industry.
yeah.
It's
Right.
not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
cannabis.
not
It's
just
not
exclusive
just
to cannabis.
contained to
No, not
cannabis.
at all.
Yeah, look what CMP's doing to the state right
Yeah.
now. Look at what Poland Spring is doing. Oh, and by the way, Poland Spring, those scumbags, they took $500,000 out of our medical marijuana surplus that we had in the marijuana program. A couple years ago, there was a bill. What happened was there was one of these towns over in western Maine that Poland Spring was pumping water out of, and a lot of wells started going dry. with
Probably
people-
Freiburg. Pretty
Yeah,
sure
I think it was Freiburg, and people couldn't. There was people that legitimately couldn't afford a new well, and they were screwed. So everybody was looking at Poland Spring like, "Hey, you guys sucked all the water up. Get us. You got to help us out." Well, they went and wrote a bill for a relief fund, and they took $500,000 out of our surplus and said, "Here, we'll go fix you guys' wells." And we were like, wait a minute, that's Poland Springs' mess. They should have to clean that up, And this is the level of corruption that's going on in Augusta on a regular basis that needs to be called out. And they squirm when they get called out, Those I've seen those politicians squirm before, and it's very effective when you call them out. A lot of people are scared, and they think, oh, well, I don't want to upset them or this or that. If they're doing some scumbag techniques, you need to identify that and let them know, and put that shit on Facebook or whatever, Write it on one of their comments on one of their posts. Make sure you're right about. Don't just do assumptions, wild assumptions, but go for it, because that's when you hit them, especially in election season, you know.
There's been such a great deal of I don't want to call it secrecy, but with COVID, we've all of a sudden identified that we've lost local news or objectivity, or at least
Lost
reporting.
access to the State House. That's the biggest thing.
Lost the state, the
access.
city, every level, and I can only imagine on a federal level how that is too.
Yeah.
But in media, there was this idea that with the loss of newspapers, we were going to start missing out on corruption. And the corruption, not on a federal level, because there are always newspapers that'll call out, but on that local level, that city or town or state level, where, I think the way like newspapers or websites that are news and media related get their stories kind of handed to them. It's not much. I mean, the Bangor Daily News does a pretty good job, as far as I could tell, going out there and really digging
And
up
actually
a
doing
little
their
bit.
job,
Yeah,
right?
digging
Most
up a little
newspapers
bit.
just buy and
But from my experience
buy
here,
a
the Sun
report.
Journal does not dig out the stories. I don't know if they employ anybody as a reporter in the sense of what reporting was and
Right.
investigating and looking into.
They don't really get that involved, I've noticed, by experience as a candidate, don't really get that involved in the community. I mean, they're pretty hyped up about selling ads, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Lewiston Sun's about the size of the Reader's Digest now. You used to open up the newspaper and your arms would be spread wide. And now it's
yeah.
like you're looking at a menu at a restaurant. You know what I mean?
And I'm just going to bring the 800-pound gorilla back in the room.
Do it.
And remind everybody that look at our newspapers, who owns them right now. 30 years ago, these were owned by Maine families or whatever that had
Right,
been
locals
in Morning
that have to look
Morning
the other
Sentinel.
local in the eye.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was family owned and stuff, and they all got bought up by Gannett or whoever.
Yeah.
I don't know who they're wheeling and dealing every other year.
Oh,
Somebody's
sure, yeah. It
merging with
changes
somebody or
names,
some
but it's
shit.
always just a larger.
But yeah, it's basically just one gigantic corporation that has an agenda, and they have all these assets spread all over the country, and so they can manipulate the news any way they see fit. And it sucks for the small town, like you said, because
Right.
it's
I mean,
not.
No, it
I
does.
called them up and said, hey, we're going to be at the corner of Main and Lisbon Street raising money for the homeless teenagers with the Store Next Door project.
And
Their response was, well, take a picture and send it in. We'll see if we can put it under the community part of the paper. And I'm like, this is a real problem. This is 150 children that are living in tents, abandoned buildings, couch surfing, that are trying to complete their education. And wasn't that interesting? I
so
guess.
nobody's able to. Yeah, you want to elaborate a little bit more on that? You've been working with this charitable
Yeah, Jamie Collette
organization.
and this another nice lady. I met them. It's funny because, not funny, but my sister works for Susan Collins, and she said, if you want to run and get elected, you have to reach out to the community, and I suggest you go to like the Good Shepherd Food Bank and the homeless shelters. And I said, okay, that'd be great. And she mentioned, she knows Jamie. She mentioned her program at the high school, and I think I called a ton of people 3 or 4 times. And then my campaign manager, I said, call them up, whatever. No response at all. So then we got a response from Jamie, and it was a guarded response. And she was like, well, a lot of people come down here, and especially when they're running for office, and they come in and tell us what a great job we're doing, and then they just kind of talk about how they're going to help us, and then they just kind of go off into the sunset.
Yep, won't see them after January.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
So I said, well, we're not really like that. I said, you can call up some of our friends in Auburn and stuff. Like we did a lot for the Bells of St. Louis and in the age-friendly kitchen they have over in Pettigill Park for senior citizens. They have a dinner once a week. Stuff
Oh,
like that.
nice.
I said, but we're really. I'm going to show up, and I want to help you. So we went there and we started hearing about everything. And these 2 ladies are extremely passionate about what they're doing, and they do it for little or nothing. And there's no funding. It's all donation driven. They have a little room down in the basement of the high school.
How are they?
with
Who are
one
they
shower.
contacting? Or it's done on donation. How do they get the word out? How do people even know?
Well, they do pretty well on the internet and social media and stuff. And there's some great people in Lewis and Auburn that are willing to step up and help them out. And but we couldn't go in because of COVID. But she said, yeah, we have a little room and we have one shower. So these kids get up in the morning out of their tent, and then go over to the high school, try to get a shower in or whatnot. And they give them like a backpack or whatnot with like camping gear, like toothpaste, toothbrush, toilet paper, cans of beans, stuff that's easy to prepare when you're camping out and you're a 14-year-old child, and you can't go home because your parents are either drug addicted, abusive, physically, mentally, sexually.
Yep. It's a space they don't want to be in anymore.
Right.
They'd
so
rather
they're willing
be
to go live in the woods, which is very dangerous, or wherever, but they still want to get their education because they want to be better. And it's such an injustice that's been done with the city of Lewiston. I mean, I guess today they're talking about they're finally going to put some money in the budget for them. I mean,
the city is?
Hopefully.
Apparently.
But I mean, you think about it, the school board, zero. I mean, they'll spend $10 million on a sports field, but they won't start up something for these kids. They don't need much. All they're looking for is like a 10-unit apartment building or something where they can have rooms for these kids when they're in crisis, so they're not, running around at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatnot. But I mean, can you imagine being a teenager? We all went to high school.
Yep.
And not be able to get washed up and not wear cool sneakers and all of this stuff. You're basically you're a homeless person. Can you imagine the pressure they get from the kids and the peer pressure and the bullying probably and all that stuff? I mean, it's not easy enough going through school. You have to do it out of a knapsack.
We think we got problems in the cannabis industry, getting outnumbered by these big guys.
Right.
Those guys.
And then they had 17 students last year. Jamie was telling me, and 16 of them graduated.
That's
which is really good.
And the
that's a
dropout
great
rate in
success.
Lewiston, I believe, I don't have the exact figure, but I'm pretty sure it's quite high. And those are kids that are living at home, playing Xbox, not wanting to do anything, And now you get these kids that are in severe peril.
Yeah, you're talking about survival.
Right.
I mean, and this is how we're taking care of them, by not taking care of them
Right.
as a community. And that's what these two ladies you were talking about in their program. And I know that there are a few other programs that do similar. I had a friend of mine who was working for a group, I think it was a group home, but I remember it under a different name, although it eludes me. Right. He said there were, they're broken down situations. They're just looking for a fighting chance.
Right.
And
Right,
putting it in perspective, I mean, yeah sure.
And like she said, the parents have a lot of issues with the police, so they don't trust police. Don't trust adults because they've been hurt by them,
Ties into the benefits that the cannabis industry has provided to the cities, to the states, and that it should be up to the people how the money is allocated. There's more money now in the budget than there was before, and you have this conversation, I think, with a lot of people, and they'll be like, oh, well, this industry is doing better. The pulp industry is doing better. The steel industry is doing better. The agriculture industry is doing better. And it's like, well, why? That's like, I feel like there's like a cause and effect situation. And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, obviously look how hard it is to find space right now. That's like saying, oh, the economy's doing well because the real estate market's booming. Well, yeah, that's because everyone wants to fucking find a grow in a space that allows it. There's none of that space available. So by saying that's just the real estate market is just ignoring the fact that really the cannabis industry is what's driving the skyrocket in a lot of industries right now in areas that are legalizing it both on a medical and recreational level. And the benefit should really be felt by the community also. Mm-hmm. The excuse shit can no longer be, after this whole, we've seen the whole crisis with the COVID, I think no one's buying the excuse of how we're going to pay for it. It just doesn't. That's not an excuse anymore. It's not a viable excuse. We've seen, or it's
how we're going to pay for
anything.
The impact of COVID.
No, anything that we see. We've seen that the federal government has enough money to throw around, basically, to anyone they want.
The game's over. We're up to
the facade in my eyes has been like
mortgaged generations by doing this.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like no one can buy the excuse anymore of
if you do the numbers, it's something like 80-something grand per citizen is what we owe. The minute you're born, you automatically, that's your cut of the national debt. That's a fucking joke. I mean, come on. No, it's not getting paid back. They know it at this point, and they're just gonna milk that cow for as long as they can.
That's a frustrating thing. They'll take out it's basically they'll take out a loan or willing to increase the debt for anything they see fit.
Oh yeah,
but any of the social programs or things you want to institute, it's like, well, how's that gonna get paid for?
The stimulus package was like less than 5% or something went to the people.
Yeah.
Like the real money went to the corporations and all this bullshit.
It's unbelievable.
What do we need $3 trillion for them them for? Like, yeah, it's a big facade, and they're just keeping those printing presses going for as long as it takes until the rest of the world calls it out and says, all right, guys, we can't keep doing this. You know, let's shake the game up, and we'll start a new game of Monopoly.
Yeah.
And everybody gets $200.
Keep doing that.
You know, it's coming. I don't know how they're going to
Everybody's
do
going
it.
to get
but-
$200.
Yeah, we'll go back to Go and
Yeah, go back.
get out of jail card,
Oh, man.
cash it in.
That'll be something.
But you know, I mean, talking about this homeless thing, like I was just talking to Representative Charlotte Warren yesterday, who's the chair of the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee, and she tells me these numbers that she knows right off the top of her head, and it's pretty alarming. I can't believe people don't know this, but we have one of the lowest, I think the number 2 or number 3 lowest crime rate in the country right now. Maine is cranking for violent crimes, I guess. But we have one of the highest incarceration amounts in Maine, and it's in the top 5. And by population, density, obviously. And then she said to me, she goes, you know what everybody's in jail for, Dawson? And I was thinking to myself, well, in Waldo County, everybody goes to jail because they didn't pay their fine or their child support or something. So I said something like that, I don't know, unpaid fines? She goes, no. She goes, drugs. And I was like, oh, of course. She said like 75% of the jails and prisons in Maine are drug offenses. Yep. And this is a lady that's been driving hard for multiple years to decriminalize cannabis, to make cannabis so that if you have a cannabis crime on your record, clear it out. Let's whatever the word is there. But
expunge it.
Expunge it, yes. And so she's very adamant that there is huge amounts of waste, and the way that we're doing this system is all ass backwards. If we could find a way to help divert these people that have drug issue, substance dependency issues and stuff, then that's going to fix a lot of our problems, and we can redirect that. If we redirect that money out of jail cells and bring it to getting people the therapy they need and the treatments they need. And
right, then it doesn't turn into a generational thing.
But
And that's the problem. Same thing with welfare in the state. It's generational. They don't know the difference because they haven't been given any tools to succeed.
We need to revamp it.
Well, I mean, and even if you look at like a national level, I mean, obviously, Maine, I don't think has ever been really strict recently in the past decade with cannabis. But if you look at like the other parts of the United States, the back of my iPad is this woman, Tamika Drummer. I find her story absolutely like appalling. I think more people should understand it and realize the whole scope of the cannabis situation throughout the United States. Is that this woman, I think, if to lay out the scope of the situation, she was 18 or 19. She got a felony, I think, 2 felonies, I want to say. And the whole 3-strike rule is very serious and basically can lock you up for the rest of your life. Well, she ended up getting pulled over. I think it was like with 1.5 ounces or something like that of cannabis when she was later in her mid-20s. She had kids at this point. She was a single mother. I think she has 3 kids. So because of the 1.5 ounces of cannabis or 2 ounces or whatever, she's been in prison for the past 18 plus years. She's serving a life sentence now for cannabis. For cannabis. So now the state is now picking up a bill for her 3 children. They're picking up her bill. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there's dudes in the state she was convicted in that have investments all across, the intercoastal 50 that are making money off of cannabis. Wow. And she's serving a life sentence. So there's situations like that, I think, that go on all the time, and people don't realize the change that needs to happen across the United States. And really, we talk about how money is a facade. Money is a facade. The prison system is a big facade. And you start to dig more into it. People need to wake up and realize that the justice system is not a just system. It really is not. It's all about, where you're at, what you're doing, and how much you can afford. It's all about which direction the lobbyists directed us to, because that's how this shit gets so screwed up, And they have lobbyists for everything. The prisons have lobbyists, police have lobbyists, drug counseling, therapy have lobbyists.
Is it mostly opioid addiction offenses in
I would
Maine?
assume a lot of heroin and stuff
probably,
too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I can't imagine cannabis is a
heroin
big thing
seems
in
to be-
Maine for filling state prisons in Maine. I can't imagine there's a whole lot to do with cannabis.
Right,
No,
because
probably
you
not
go
so
down
much
to
anymore.
I mean, maybe more in the southern states, but Maine's pretty well known for its harder drug addictions, especially in like rural counties.
Right.
Right, because you go down to Augusta and you try to talk common sense, like what we were just talking about. How about if we spend our money in a different way and we rethink this? And then the lobbyists come in with like their usually they got studies and all this
Statistics,
data.
they call them, yeah.
Oh, they bring in all this
yeah.
bullshit science, and they start wrapping off their stuff to all their buddies that they've been dealing with for the last 10 years in Augusta, and then before you know it, the 20 people that just stood up and poured their life story out on the table just got debunked by some bunch of bozos walking around with suits and ties that they don't even know what the hell cannabis looks like, or anything else.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on a regular basis. And they overpower us. It's almost like how a police officer's testimony overpowers the defendant, like their word is 10 times worth more than, and so it's like that in Augusta sometimes with the lobbyists, and it's so difficult to maneuver with these guys. So it takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of voices, and it takes some people on the inside, and it's so important.
I witnessed it firsthand when I went to the Lewiston school board meeting when they were trying to get rid of the SROs, the officer friendlies, as I know them as, the police officers in the school. There's a big movement
like
to get
a liaison in the building?
Right, yeah. And there's a big movement to get them removed, and I'm thinking to myself, when my kids were in school, they had him, and I was happy to see him, and the kids went up to him, and I mean, everybody, I don't know, if you have a bad experience with the police, a lot of times it's like, I'm afraid of the police when I'm driving down the road and my sticker's out. I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm going to get a friggin' ticket. You know what I mean?
You're not.
Yeah. Somebody's going to. But that's when you're afraid, because they had all these people that came up and they said, well, my kids are afraid of the police because their parents are afraid of the police. And I'm like, well, they're probably doing something wrong. But police are the first people that, and I'm not trying to be 100% police. I mean, they're human beings and they do make mistakes. But I mean, that's the first person people call, especially the downtown people.
Yeah.
When their boyfriend beats them up or whatever, they call the cops. They don't call their dad or their uncle or whatever. You know what I mean? And the thing is, to take them out of the schools is absolutely ridiculous. But I watched this guy who is on the planning board or the school board or whatever, and I watched him play the statistic game. Well, in Portland, Oregon, they do this, and in New York City, this happens. Well, this is Maine. This is Lewiston, Maine. Their statistics don't even match anything. You know what I mean?
That's the problem. Is like everything is so big. People fail to realize that the United States is massive, and that's why I feel like a lot of people that come over and visit. What's the one thing that's been crazy about your trip? And they're like, how fucking big this place is. Like, I went to one place, and it's like I went to Texas, and those people are nothing like you. I went to California. They're nothing like the people in Texas or like you. And that explains a lot. And I feel like that Maine and every other state, where it's just such a big country, you can't use other areas to represent what we have going on here. And I saw that issue too. And I was actually on the side personally, over nationally, that I think that there is some issues that have to be addressed. But I also thought that it has to be addressed geographically in a sense where some states have better relations naturally with police than others do. It's just how it is, and so I think
what I witnessed there was the same thing that Dawson was talking about, was that this guy came up with statistics. They had two of the police officers came up pleading for their job. Citizens came up. They had a petition.
In support of the police officers?
Yep, in support of the police department. And that one guy manipulated the other people on the board, and they said no. And they were kicking that $70,000. It's a $70,000 salary. We'll be able to get health workers in and stuff. They're kicking $70,000 around in the Lewiston school system. I mean, are you out of your mind? Well, it wasn't like it was $1 million.
But also, I think if you think about it, if someone would have come out like you and would have had that approach of yes, listen, police officers are human beings too. They do wrong, and that I think that the relationship that's here in the Lewiston community is very strong with the officers and the outreach that they have. But I do remember that there was one, I forget the woman who was running, Adrian Bennett or something like that. And she came out, she was very politically right. And I think she skewed the whole issue. She came out with the Support Our Troops rally in front of the Lewiston High School. And she polarized the issue such to an extent where it made the Lewiston High School people feel like, oh, the board was sitting there like, oh God, this is political now. If we don't do it, we're on the right side. We're on the right, literal, we're on the right. So I feel like she almost force their hand in a sense to make it seem to gaslight her situation even more, which is a very common tactic of politicians. And that's one reason I really don't support her at all. I think she's a complete stooge, politically speaking, like a lot of them are. But I think that was the reason that the whole Lewiston thing tanked, is that you didn't have anyone that had the voice like you do, that came out there and was like, listen, the left isn't right, the right isn't right. But here in Lewiston, Maine, we're doing it right.
Well, so one of the statistics they had, which was pretty comical, was that there's never been a police officer in the school that stopped a school shooting. Okay? it didn't deter it from happening. Well, it's not going to deter it from happening unless you have the whole building surrounded with police.
I never thought of that liaison, that police officer in the
so
school.
when someone
as a
does come to a
deterrent.
school, right? But when someone does come into a school, and a horrible thing happens, and they start shooting people, do you want to rely on the janitor or the gym teacher to try to quell the situation down? Even get on the phone, call 911. It's going to take him 15 minutes to get there. You know what I mean? You've got to have a police officer there. He's got to.
But the argument of over-policing is real too, because I experienced it firsthand in high school in situations, and that's where the argument is enforced by some people. Is you think that the situations that happened back in the day don't happen or don't occur now, or occur to more serious consequences, I should say. Like back in the day when scuffles used to happen, fights used to happen. People sorted it out, and then that was the natural rhythm of life. Now that's been taken away. If a fight happens, you're looking at assault charges, you're looking at lawyer fees. For Christ's sakes, if a party happens outside of school and the girls in the SRO office are watching the Snapchat and he's there, he starts an investigation that's happened multiple times. And so I do see where some people have the feeling that there's a major over-policing problem, because there is, in some senses. There is some SRO officers that oftentimes overstep their boundaries. They're no longer a liaison. They're acting as private investigators. And at that point, it becomes a hassle. I mean, when my high school was hell, because we had an SRO officer that constantly did these private investigations on the kids, and little small parties that, never would fly underneath the radar were getting busted and kids suspended from sports, and people have to hiring lawyers. And this is all from this one overzealous SRO officer. So I do get the argument on both sides. I think it's about, and it's just about accepting, like you said.
There always needs to be oversight.
It's the you know what it is? It's everything that's broken in our government as it is now. It's the oversight. There's no oversight. Like CMP's buying their way in, Poland Springs, I went through all those examples, and those guys have huge influence. And it's the same thing going on almost every level where, like, let's say any industry has bad actors in it. So you got your bad cops and you got your good cops. Well, the failure breakdown that I see right now is the good cops are watching the bad cops do stupid shit, and rather than call them out and do what they probably should be doing since they took that oath, they're instead lying in police reports and covering their ass and manipulating evidence and shit. And we see it regularly happen. And those are the bad actors in that industry. And now you go to the cannabis industry or the medical industry or somewhere else, and you've got bad actors in every industry. And if you're working for a bad actor, let's say some big paper company, and they're taking truckloads of chemicals that they're supposedly taken care of properly in a proper sanitation system or whatever, and they're just dumping it in a river somewhere. Your obligation is to call those bastards out. You don't sit back. I mean, you want to call it narcan, but they are destroying and they are profiting off that destruction. And it's the same thing that's going on in every industry in this country, really. And it's we're dealing with this corruption crap. The police are dealing with the corruption level, the water companies, the paper, everybody's got corruption. And it's about calling this shit out and cleaning up the bullshit and,
Well, I think, a lot of it is, Lewis and Maine, if you think about it, not a lot of headlines about police brutality and stuff. When they had the Black Lives Matter thing, they marched with them, and I talked to some of the guys from Black Lives Matter, and I said it was great. They let them lay down.
There was a really good representation.
It was
here.
great, yeah, and that's what Lewison's all about. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and a police overworked. Yeah, I know quite a few guys that are cops, and I've talked to them over the years, and they have to work like 70 hours a week to make ends meet. They don't pay them crap, so they're riding around in their car. I mean, and if you think about it, I mean, I'm not crapping on firemen, but I mean the firemen are making chili in the house. You don't see fire trucks buzzing up and down the street.
There's moments of
24/7.
action. Yeah, right.
But I'm saying these guys are out there and witnessing things and really, and yeah, there are bad guys, but I think as a whole there's some good guys. But I think what they need to do is they need to raise their wages and they need to raise awareness and more training for them so they can handle these situations because they are human beings.
Right.
We don't know what they go through every day when they.
Right.
I mean, I had one friend of mine. Some guy beat up his girlfriend. He said you couldn't even tell what she was. She was just destroyed. Oh. And he went to go arrest him, and the guy stabbed him. Oh. Right? He ended up getting off of the force. They put him, whatever they call it, longer than the guy was in jail. And he couldn't work his overtime pay, so he was just getting a straight pay. The guy was financially strapped because he had like a 90-day suspension with pay for an investigation or whatever it was.
Right.
Wow. So it goes both ways. I mean,
I think, we talked about, speaking in absolutes is just never a good thing as far as, with some of the stuff you were saying, as far as never believing in one thing or always aligning with a political party all the time. It's good to try to see the truth and be in the middle on some stuff. And it's one thing that I think both of you guys have really tried to do. And some things we want to talk about later on. We'll hop off, take a little quick break, and come back on and touch on some of those things.
Yeah.
Want to grab something to eat real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess.
I wish we could do a redo, because there's ways to get this money in Maine. And like SCORE, right in Portland, it's a federal program that's called SCORE, and it's a bunch of people that are mostly retired, and now they're angel investors. Mm-hmm. And so you go, and they're basically people that, they're not in the business anymore, but they're going crazy because they got to keep themselves busy every day. So they're happy to help, and they volunteer their time.
Right.
And you go in and they teach you classes, and they teach you tricks about how to set up a business plan and how to make,
I've been to SCORE.
Oh, really?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
I had issues with my insulation company.
And they know all the fucking local gurus that got the $10 million houses down on the coast of Maine that are right just like them. So if they're not interested in what you're talking about, they can help point you in the right direction to somebody that's up their alley. And so the guy that was training me and my friend, we went to this like 8 years ago when we were first thinking about getting in the cannabis business, or I guess it was 10 years ago. And it was the coolest thing because it was right when Kodak was going to hell because the internet screwed everything up and the digital cameras and shit. And this guy was part of the busted up Kodak thing, and he was like the former CFO or something. He was right ranked up there, the top 3 or 4. And he was our instructor. He was teaching us all this shit, how to do business plans and stuff, and it was really cool. And I don't think a lot of people in Maine realize about these things, but there's ways to get that money right in Maine, and
whatever your venture going forward would be.
Yeah, exactly.
But they do an incredible job because I used them when my business exploded in the weatherization, and I was having some growing pains, and a friend of mine said, we'll go down to the SCORE, man. Those guys will help you out. And I'm like, I don't want to listen to some old guy tell me about those old war stories. And I'll tell you, they were the most non-judgmental. They'd seen it all before. They would ask the real questions. Well, how do you do this and why do you do that? And and they really, I think, kind of saved my business because the guy was dynamite. I see him on the street today, and I always say, man, thanks so much. Right. Made such a big difference. And he ran a giant roofing company for years, and he's retired. Same thing. And like you said, they get so excited when you talk to them too, man. I mean, they're pumped up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you tell them you have a problem, they're like excited, so now because they're gonna help you solve it.
Yeah, they love.
They don't
to solve
look
the
down their
problems.
nose because I always said, well, I don't want to go there and get intimidated by some dude that's a multimillionaire and I'm just scratching by and But no, they were really cool.
And I
people.
remember there was some lady there that was there, and like I said, this was like 10 years ago, and her fucking idea was. Well, she was already doing it. She was on a small business plan thing, and she wanted to take it to the next level, and she was making vegan, gluten-free baked goods. And I remember me and my friend were looking at her going, what the fuck is this crazy girl saying? Who the hell's going to eat that shit, And we're thinking, she's crazy. She's lost her mind. Like, we got the right idea. We're going with cannabis. And now I'm in hindsight looking back going, holy fuck, that girl nailed it, man. She knew exactly what was coming out.
Should have went gluten, damn it.
Yeah, now I'm like, and she's got this big fucking gluten-free company now, and I can't remember what it's called, but I've seen it in the news. Like
still local or?
Yeah, it's right here in Maine,
awesome.
And I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it was pretty cool,
Do they want to be known? Is it something where a lot of people are able to use them? You have to be proactive if you're going to you have to
SCORE?
Yeah, to SCORE.
They're just there. All you do is call them up. They're part of the Chamber of Commerce on Lisbon Street, right here in town.
Yeah, it's like a free service.
Yeah, you just call them up.
Yeah, you show up. They give you all kinds of pamphlets.
And then they'll ask you, well, what kind of business are you in?
Yeah.
Which must have been tough when you did it because they probably said, we don't have any former weed growers. Yeah. Well, we do, but they're all
We're
in
with
jail.
the federal government. We get funds from the feds.
Yeah.
Let's pretend you
we're gonna
didn't
have
say
to
that part.
pass
Let's
on
think of a new.
But no, they
let's
do.
think
They
of a
ask
new
you,
business plan.
what's your plan? What are you trying to do? What are you in business for? And they go, Bill did this, or Betty did this, or whoever it is. You know what I mean?
No,
and
it's
they match
funny.
you right up.
It's funny that Dawson said that. Or you guys are just talking about it. They wouldn't, at this point, they'd be more accepting of it, but there was nobody who was guiding you back then. Nobody who wanted to take that risk into cannabis.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
10 years ago. I mean, you had to kind of, whatever you were going to build up at the point, the vision was all yours. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
No. I mean, I don't know, when Johnny and I first started, which must be 7 or 8 years ago, we started, like a lot of people, in a tent in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
And my girlfriend at the time came home and she says, "What are you guys doing down here?" I said, "We're growing weed." And she's like, "Get it out of the house," and stuff. And then we graduated to half of the 2-car garage.
There you go. Oh, yeah. Moving up.
And,
Yep.
yeah.
That's where I started.
But we didn't have anybody to really show us. I mean, we had a few friends and stuff and whatnot, but there's nothing. There's really nothing. No resource out there.
It was weird.
You know, now they have people that'll help
when I
consultants.
first started,
A lot more
growing-
knowledge to it, too, now.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started, I was growing in my garage, and we live on this dirt road that's like a dead-end dirt road. And there's like only 3 houses further down the road from me. And every time a car would drive down, I'd be looking out my window like, is it the cops? Who the hell is it? What the hell's
Oh, I
going
had the
on
same
here?
thing with
Why is
Johnny.
this-
I was petrified.
Oh, for the first 2 or 3 years, I was horrified. I had this piece of paper that said I could grow weed, but I just was convinced it's fake. You know, it's just they're setting me up. They're gonna come shut my shit down any day now.
Yeah, they started this project just so they could bust
this is
you.
how they wanted to bust
right.
us.
Ab scam.
So I was never comfortable, and then all of a sudden one day my friend calls me up and he goes, my friend who used to be my patient, he goes, "Dawson, I just signed up to be a caregiver." I go, "Oh, cool." And he was going to grow in this huge warehouse in Farmington.
Yeah.
At, I forget what the name of the address is, but it was basically...
You're worried about your small location. This guy's putting it
And
right out there.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, what? How big is this place? And how many? There's like 8 caregivers in one building. And I was like, holy shit. And I watched him do that for like a year or so. And I was like, this was about 2013, early, and I was like, okay, screw this. I'm going to get a warehouse. I'm like, I don't know how this works, but I'm getting one. And then I went to Unity, and I bought a warehouse, and my plan was we were going to chop it up, and we were going to rent it out like little apartments, and, you know, everybody was going to make money, and then I decided, how the hell are we going to sell all this weed? Like, we can grow shit tons of it. It'll be great. It'll be worth money, but I'm not going to be able to find 150 patients to sell all this crap to.
Yeah.
So then I decided, well, shit, I'll just make a store and I'll just sell it right here. I'll just never have more than 5 patients. So I called up my lawyer, who was Mark Dion at the time. I told him a new plan. He goes, what? He goes, no, Dawson, no, we can't do that. And then one thing led to another, and he fired me. And then I started as a client. He fired me. He said he was going to give me back my restitution, not my retainer, and then I'd have to go find another lawyer. So I was like,
that's when things are rough. Huh?
yeah, I was like,
take this back.
Shit,
We
I was
don't
on my
want
own
that.
after that. I'm like, holy shit! I made a few phone calls, and I was like, I guess I'm on my own. But it was.
It was a big.
The warehouse
you fought it
thing
on a
is
local
really
battle.
what broke me out of my garage.
Yeah.
Seeing my friend do it and get away with it, and then, well, I mean, he was literally following the law. I mean, he wasn't, but at the same time, he was doing it on a much bigger level, and everybody else was like in their garages or in their closets or something, or their basements growing 5 or 6 plants. And so that's when I came out of the woodwork, and then everything went crazy after that.
Yeah, it has.
No,
And
it's
it's gone
good.
just
Now
straightforward.
it's more structured, and we finally got a defined way to do this stuff that's illegal, and it gives us an opportunity to build our businesses without having to jump through 100,000 loopholes trying to find a way to do it legal. Now we can just, but that's going to be a problem this year because they're going to try to make that so it's more and more difficult until it's almost impossible, and that's when
to operate as a small.
exactly
Right, they're going to squeeze everybody out.
that's the whole game plan right there.
Yeah. Just like we were talking about the banking. We have Seaport as a bank.
Yep.
That's it.
And
they charge us. I mean, they charge us to process our cash, which is insane to me.
It is. It's
You know,
crazy.
I mean,
How so? So
well, it's a certain percentage. If
Deposit
you
fee.
deposit $500,000, they charge you $800 or $900. I don't know exactly what the thing is. But,
Yeah, right.
They prorate it over the year or whatever. But it's a fee, just like a banking fee. It's insane.
Yeah, the kind of thing that you shouldn't
But-
have to be operating on.
No, you wouldn't think if you're bringing cash into a place.
That's how banks make their money. The more
Right.
depositors they have.
Well, it is a credit
they-
union, yes.
Yeah, they're a credit union, but
Oh, right.
So they do operate
They operate like
differently.
a bank. Like they won't. You can't.
Well, no, them
we can't borrow
introducing
money from them, but our
some
employees
like a
can.
fee like that, or really working at a higher percentage seems anti-credit union like.
Right,
in
exactly.
its actions.
Yeah, exactly.
They've
Yeah.
always been, I think, knowing that they were
It's like a
gonna-
money laundering fee, basically. I mean, because the other banks won't take it.
You
but
said it.
We'll take your money for a fee.
Yeah.
We're not just going to take it.
No,
You know,
I know.
It's funny, and
And that's not a standard practice. That shouldn't be. Not if you're inviting business.
Right,
But they know
right.
they're the only show.
yeah, right, yeah, exactly. But
Okay, so you,
We wanted to talk small business.
yeah.
Small business and the accessibility for financing for small business, especially in like the communities throughout Maine, Lewis and Auburn in particular.
yeah, well, that's been one of the biggest problems. That's another reason why I'm running. Is that as a small business person, it's tough to get money, and you can only hit up mom and dad and your rich uncle so many times or whatever if you want to really
Yeah.
grow your business.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities, but they're masked behind red tape and regulation after regulation, and they need more accessible small business where if someone has an idea, they should be able to give them some type of funding to just at least to get the idea off the ground.
Yeah, to be able to explore, to see
What's that?
how.
Yeah, right,
these-
exactly. And it seems like everybody goes on about how small business is the backbone of the country, but small business basically gets the bone, and there isn't a lot of meat left on it. The big corporations, they get all the sweetheart deals and all the tax breaks and stuff. It's the same thing we were going to talk about, like the landlords and stuff in town. They run up against tough times because they have all this federal housing that's popping up everywhere, but they're not getting tax breaks, they're not getting grants. There are some available, but try to go find one, or figure out how you're going to get that. But they need to make that more of an even playing field for those guys where they can get some of that money to improve their buildings and make their life better for everybody. And, you got a lot of these old Lewiston families that have been, working in the mill and then saving their money and then buying a building and so they can pass it down to their kids or that's their retirement and stuff like that. And they're getting all squeezed out by a lot of these bigger corporations that come in here.
How could small business be treated, or is it something where small business could endure at the level it's at now in a taxation sense, as long as it was passed along or protected to a greater degree than what all the loopholes that larger corporations are given continually?
Right. Well,
it doesn't invite
right, well,
people.
the biggest thing is small business pays the most in taxes. They pay the most in insurance. They pay the most in cost of goods, and that's not fair because 75% of this country is small business. So
Yeah.
you would think that they would have insurance-wise. They say, "Oh, you're a small business. Come join the other 75% of the businesses, and we're going to drive your rates down." But they don't. They just, it's like we're like a convenience store shopper. It's like the guy that goes to the Big Apple to get his weekly groceries.
Right.
You know what I mean?
How does Maine fight for, as a state, on a state level, fight for small businesses? And where are they falling short, and maybe where could they make an adjustment to be better, a better working partner with small businesses?
Right.
Would
Well,
it be tax breaks or
tax breaks are huge.
Yeah.
The taxes are killing everybody in small business, and just the accessibility of financing. If you go to a bank as a small business, you're not going to get a lower income interest rate. You're going to pay the top amount. Even cap agencies in town, because we did some financing with the local cap agency. I won't mention her name. 10%. I mean, I could have gone to the hard money guy down the street and not filled out any papers for an extra 2% or whatever those guys get, you know what I mean? So it's pretty amazing. It's like, and they're getting free money from the federal government to subsidize the small businesses. But they're getting 10% interest instead of 1 or 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're
there's a
starting
lot
to
of
head
work
back.
that needs to be done, to try to get small business and to get the cannabis industry to the point where they can go out and get financing. I mean, the state's willing to take our tax money. They're willing to, we all have employees, we all have workers' comp, we pay all the matching FICA and all the Social Security, and we do everything like any other business.
Yeah, we should have
we're
an
being
opportunity.
discriminated against.
We should have an opportunity. They should have a business loan program for the cannabis industry until the feds get their crap together
Right.
and the banks get
Set it up
exactly.
on a state level, or
yeah. Like we're
Yeah.
doing $111 million in sales last year. Seems as though they could kick aside a little of that money and start a fund that doesn't even cost the government anything. It's just a loan system where me or John could go apply as a caregiver,
Oh, true.
qualify
Yeah,
for a certain
right.
percent of those funds based on everything, and now we repay that loan with a little bit of interest maybe, or maybe it's interest free to make it easier for the little guy. And then, at the end of the day, everybody's happy, and somebody else gets to borrow that money that I just repaid.
Right.
And
it's the thing it does with the economy. I mean, think about all of the money that all of us growers have spent on electricians,
oh yeah,
plumbers, carpenters, concrete guys, lighting. It's amazing. I mean, I know a lot of guys that are small contractors, and they said their business is great because of the medical marijuana business. Because I mean, it's like, oh yeah, all I do is grow room after grow room. Yeah, I'm crushing it, man. I got to go
guys
to this
are
guy.
killing it.
Got to heat pump people.
yeah. The
And those are high,
electricians.
but it's all trickles down because the heat pump guy, if he's doing a bunch of grow rooms, now he's hiring more people.
Right.
So people are getting employed. So
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how you could get the data, but if they could figure out the impact that marijuana has on the state, just employment-wise.
The guy who sells the scales, one of these guys that has his own business that's been selling scales for a living, state certified scales, was literally getting ready to close his shop. And all of a sudden, literally the state of Maine just started issuing this thing, OMP, where they wanted everybody to start having certified scales. And this guy is killing it now. It's been like, I don't know what it's been, like 6 or 7 or 8 months or something. And it literally turned his whole business around. He was getting ready to close the shop up.
Yeah.
And now he can't keep up with it.
Good.
And
What a ride, though. That's so.
what a
that's
crazy
so bad.
concept, huh? Yeah.
Emotional,
Saved by
too.
I got
marijuana.
them. I got them.
Saved
Come
the
on.
family.
Right, yeah. Marijuana saved the state
We
of
got
Maine.
the family house still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think people's opinions of marijuana or cannabis, I guess I should say, they're starting. We're in that transition phase where I think people are starting to reevaluate the whole situation and realize, okay, you know what, this whole bias, just
Prohibition, in a
stereotypical
sense, is-
view.
Well, I
of
think
it
there
is-
needs to be a campaign, too, to educate the public. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree
say,
with that. I agree.
You don't like pot? Well, you don't like that $175 million that we just gave you
Right.
this year. You know what I mean? Look at alcohol, and there's other things that they've caused a lot bigger
having a
problems.
chance to have a say in where that money gets allocated after that's being collected off of,
Right.
and,
And a lot
and
of-
investing into
Yeah,
areas
another
that
thing that's kind of a stickler is that you got these other communities that they don't want cannabis in their communities, but they're going to have their hand out, that $100 and $200 million. You know that,
Right,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? But cities like Auburn and Lewiston that have embraced it,
Exactly.
had enough foresight to say, wait a minute, this is a huge moneymaker for these cities.
yeah,
Huge.
yeah,
And
it's
it's in the idea that there's no available warehousing in the city anymore, where there was a huge glut of.
I remember talking to one of the inspectors, city inspectors, city code enforcement, and Tom.
Yeah.
And he said he had never seen anything like he had since cannabis
Right.
had
It's
come into
bigger than
this
any
area.
type of
And he'd been around
manufacturing.
for a while
Right,
in
oh,
the
yeah,
Lewiston
yeah.
scene.
It's bigger than if like the GE came to town or something like that. Yeah, they grab one big building, but we're talking about you can't find a place. I mean, I have a friend of mine that just sold a building for a lot of money, and the only reason why he got his money is because a guy from cannabis bought it.
It is very fragile. We're at a point where we need to guide it and kind of give it a chance to reinvest
very
in the
fragile.
community. Because if we don't seize this moment with how we can alter policy or
Right.
change our communities to the way
Right.
we want,
Right.
even through some sort of
It's very
influence
important
on
we're
the state
driving.
level. Yeah, if we
'Cause
don't
these
have that,
guys-
we're going to lose this. This is a money push.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if
yeah.
it needs new policy, they're not going to come up with that money any old spot. You
Right.
need to have them.
And
we need to
the
force
thing
them
is,
on
if
that.
once these superstores come into town with all of these,
No, it's going to be a different battle too.
they're going to,
Yeah.
wellness and all these guys, they're not going to be going to these small dudes to process their stuff. They're going to have it all down in New Jersey somewhere, just like I mean, no one knows CBD more than you do. I mean, you've seen how that's played out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you
Oh,
got
yeah,
gas
that's
station
true.
CBD, and I mean, it's
Right.
Oh,
just
so many different.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and it's
That was
snake
brutal.
oil, but these guys aren't going to be doing work.
gas station.
They don't have the pure and the right stuff like you do. But I mean, we're going to have these people that are going
It
to be
didn't much matter because it was so fucking accessible for
Right,
them
right.
and so watered down. It was such a punch to the face to what CBD is when it came out,
Right.
when it was in those locations, those spots.
Right,
It felt like
exactly.
such an intrusion, and it happened really quick and really fast. And it's almost like it has to save its reputation for those who don't know it or bought that stuff, and now they're like, I'm all set. Didn't do anything for me. They don't know that difference. And you're right. It is about the outreach. It's about how are we going to. COVID's really kind of squashed it in a sense. I think the cannabis community's still gotten together here and there. We still have had opportunities and chances
right,
to.
but we haven't gotten together like we used to.
But
It's
no, we
different.
haven't, and we haven't. And how are we bridging with our communities directly? Those who aren't going to be consumers, but we want them to know that, hey, we want to be a part of where you
Right,
live as
right.
well.
I
And we're
think
not.
most guys in cannabis. I mean, my phone was just ringing, and it was a councilman from Auburn. I know he wants us to help on some project or whatnot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and
consulting in a sense for
well, no,
for
just
or helping them
out,
out.
like donating or putting time in to help. So, something for the elderly or whatever.
Yep.
And it's funny because I spoke with somebody in Lewiston, and I said, well, we want to do this and that, and he goes, wow, it seems like all of you cannabis guys. He says, I don't know if it's just a sales pitch. He says, but it seems like all of you cannabis guys actually want to help the community. And I'm like, yeah, it's not a sales pitch. It's the way we feel about things. 'Cause
Right.
it's a whole different culture. I think and you see it.
We just
when
want to
you-
be accepted.
Right, but when you go and fight against the big guys, you notice because a lot of my friends will say, well, you guys don't have a chance because look at when Walmart came to town and then all the small hardware stores rolled up, and they devastate Main Street.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But cannabis people are a whole different animal. They're not going to go to the Wellness Connection to save, 17 cents on a cartridge.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like people do when they go to Walmart.
Exactly,
Right. So
exactly.
I mean, I think that we have a really good chance to with
Plus
your
our
with your
products-
hard work, that's for sure.
Right.
And
Everybody,
I think we have a really good chance of beating up on those guys. I really do. Not to,
Yeah,
we're
'cause-
off topic, but that's
No, we're on topic always, aren't we?
Yeah, because like this will be what the thing is going to be next year. I'll give some examples of what's coming around the corner. They're going to have super budget issues. So the supplemental bill that they're going to give us is going to have tax increases and things like that in different departments. And one of them, from what I'm hearing, is going to be medical marijuana. They're going to want to bring it up to the same levels as adult use.
On
So
the
they can
taxation
generate-
level.
Yeah, they're going to try to do some. And so what we need to do is we need to get in there and judo flip that shit and send it in another direction. Because what they're basically saying is, let's raise the price of the product so we can generate more money. And the goal is let's generate more money so we can pay off this budget. So if we raise the price, we're obviously going to lose out on some of the sales. It's not going to increase sales. It's going to slow it down. You might get a little more than you used to get for those sales, but who knows how that's going to end up. But instead of doing that, we all had inventory problems this year, supply and demand issues as caregivers for the most part. Instead of raising taxes, raise the plant count, because that's the real fix right there. We get double the plant count or triple the plant count. We pay double or triple the fees for those cards, just like we would for any other plants. And then we can generate that 2 or 3 times tax revenue. That's the ultimate goal that they're looking to do. And not only that, but when we do it this way,
Would you be happy with trading a new tax bracket for the openness of how you could expand out a grow or expand out what you're cultivating to make it a little bit more cost
well,
effective?
no, I mean, I wouldn't.
Or-
No. I mean, as far as a new tax bracket, I don't think there should be a new tax.
No,
I think
not at all.
we keep it at 5.5%. Because they're going to want, let's say they want to bring it up to 10%, or maybe they bring it up to 15% or whatever. So we argue back and say, no, don't raise the cost of the product. Instead, keep the 5.5% the same and just give us more plants to grow. Because if I can grow 60 flowering instead of 30, I can bring in double the sales tax that I used to bring in.
True.
And if you give me triple the plant count, that's triple. And I think I can sell just about all this shit. So at the end of the day, if what we're looking for is to generate more sales tax, I'm pretty certain I can triple my output. Just give me more plants. And now we've got to go sell that story and make sure the damn scumbag lobbyists don't sell their story because they want to bring us up. They want our prices to be so high that the adult use can
theirs
compete
look
with
better?
us. That the adult use can compete with us now because that's the adult use's big problem is medical.
Prices right now were 50, 55, or 55, 60 in adult use, mostly.
That's what I'm hearing. It's
Yeah,
like
that's what I've been
somewhere
hearing.
between
You heard it too,
55
Joe?
and
Yeah.
65 on average.
Yeah.
So they want us instead of
Which is
them
higher.
fixing their program and making it so that their products can be more affordable and more accessible and more opportunity for a business person to sign up for that program. Instead of doing that, they want to bring our program up to the level of that program that's already admittedly broken to a certain extent, because why should you have to pay $65 for an eighth when you can buy it down the road for $35? And,
Right.
And so they got to fix that. And the answer isn't to raise the prices on everything. This isn't Hollywood. We don't have money to throw around. And
Right, but I think also the legislature is lazy, and they would be a lot happier if there was maybe 2 or 3 operations in the whole state, because then they only have to keep an eye on 2 or 3 people.
Well, that's the
You know
way
what I mean?
they-
They're trying to put in a neat little package.
Yeah.
They're taking away a craft. It's like taking the beer business and and all these craft beer
Oh,
places and
condensing,
saying, say, okay, no, it's going to cost you triple the cost for all of you doing business now, so we're going to just get rid of you and we're just going to have Budweiser's taken over.
Right,
'Cause
right.
We
And
want to deal with Budweiser because they're just going to give us one check.
Right, yeah, exactly.
You know.
And they're easy to follow and
Right.
exactly.
What were the number of caregivers this year as documented? Was it 20? Was it 30,
looked
25
at
or
it lately.
3,200 somewhere?
It's always between like 2,500 and 3,000 for the
yeah, it
most part.
fluctuates a lot, right?
Yeah, different time. And so I haven't looked at it lately, but
You're right. If
I
you
know
could work
that
with a dozen instead of.
the patient count was like between 60 and 65,000 at the end of last December,
Yeah.
which is the biggest ever. That's huge.
Right.
Counting our out of state this year, if somehow they could configure numbers like that as well. It's probably
It's going to be
been-
huge.
Yeah, it's
the
huge
out-of-state
impact.
market. I mean, well, the people come up from out of state because the product with their state-run weed operations, like in Mass and stuff, the product's horrible.
Yeah.
The service
They
is
fucked
horrible.
it all up. The price sucks.
I mean, if you're willing to drive 2.5 or 3
Yeah.
hours to get, you know what I mean? There's something wrong with where you're coming from then.
You know,
I had a guy write me. He was so pissed off. He's coming up to join us at the next Theory Wellness protest. And so he was pissed. He drove up here from Boston only to get to the South Portland. He thought he was going to get Maine weed if he drove to South Portland Theory Wellness. And he bought a couple strains, and he said it was the identical same weed as what they sell at the dispensary down in Boston. And he was so pissed off, so he started writing them text messages. Apparently their Waterville phone number is actually a cell phone number, so he starts text messaging.
Oh, no.
And they're texting back, and all of a sudden they're like, whoops, we're sorry about that. It looks real similar, but it's really not the same weed. It's actually different weed. We bought it from Maine Caregivers, and it was the friggin' funniest thing. I'm watching, and all of a sudden, like, it keeps getting escalated to, like, the next level up. And this is the manager, George. I'm here to say that it was Maine weed. And the guy's all pissed off, and they're basically saying, come in, we'll try to fix it. Don't give us a bad review. Well, the guy got so pissed off, he's literally been messaging me regularly, and he wants to come to Maine now for the next protest because he's so mad at him. And so he's driving up to Massachusetts now to buy his Maine weed, and now he knows not to go to Theory Wellness, and he wants to start protesting. I think that's pretty fucking
Yeah,
funny
that's
right
awesome.
there.
That's really good.
It's so funny because we've had so many people come up to us when we're protesting in front of these places, whether it's Theory Wellness or Wellness Connection, and they're driving by in like Massachusetts license plate cars, and they're rolling down their window, and like one guy was at Wellness Connection, he was like, yeah, all right, keep it local. And we go, no, we go, that place is not local. And he was like, what? What are you talking about? He was horrified. And so we went up to the side and had a chat with him for like 5 minutes. Oh, by the end of it all, he was taking his picture with us, and we were, he was high-fiving us. He's like, next time, we gave him like 3 different places to go to. He was all excited. But Massachusetts plates, and there's all kinds of them. They don't even support the out-of-staters.
No, they
coming up
don't. You know, we opening up the store, and there's some brands. Obviously, it's not in every store, but it's in a portion of stores for sure. We get a lot of New England people who come to the store, like from out of state, who shop or grab it because they're interested in the brands, and they know the brands, and they know they know the product.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they go right on weed maps with our store, and it's like, they'll call up, hey, I'm coming up, I want to get this and that.
Do you have this, or can
Right,
you
yeah, I
sell
wanna
it
make
aside
sure,
for me,
yeah.
or this
Oh,
or
yeah,
that? Yeah. Some have built up to a point where they have that attraction. In fact, a lot of them, and that's great for the main cannabis, craft cannabis
It is.
scene. You know,
It is.
for
It
those
really
who
is.
want
It's
it.
really cool. I mean, when you think about it, it's like the coolest thing you could ask for. Like, we are forcing the out-of-state people to come to vacation land. They got to stop at a restaurant or two, you know.
course.
Maybe they even stay at a hotel or a couple nights or whatever. And then they're going to spend their money up in Maine, and then they're going to go back to Massachusetts. And some of these people, it's not like they're all hunters and fishers or skiers or anything. These are people that might never have come to Maine if it wasn't for this, you know. And
Right.
and then on top of that, you got all the people
Making the vacation because of
Exactly. Like, this is a whole new segment. Like,
Cannabis
and-
tourism's a real thing.
yeah, it is.
Exactly. And it's going to escalate all the current industries too. You know, some of these people are coming up to eat lobster and ride on the boat, the whale show
Yeah.
boat
Yeah.
or whatever, you know.
And they
Buy
all
that
do it while
gas.
getting high too, which is kind of like the funny
That's
thing about
it.
it. Like,
That's
I've
it.
also
So
I've
Maine-
enjoyed more of it too. Like Maine has like a weird thing now,
so,
where it's
like-
like Portland's known for like getting stoned as shit and then going to have some good food.
Yeah, because like think about this. Like if you're a regular camper guy, let's say, right, or so maybe you normally go to either Maine, Vermont, or New Hampshire. Well, now, but you're a stoner, so now you're definitely coming to Maine. we just stacked the deck big time.
Yeah.
On New Hampshire and Vermont, pretty much, because they really don't have their shit together yet. And Mass really doesn't either. You know, I mean, let's face it. Nobody
Who'd want to
in
go on
England-
vacation in Massachusetts?
Yeah,
Well,
nobody
the
goes
Cape's
camping
all
down
right,
there.
but
No,
nobody
No,
goes.
we have
We
it,
just
and we
cornered
probably
the
have
market.
it. You know, it's been good to have had a
Skiing.
couple years, a good 4 or 5 years for you, longer than a lot of other people about a storefront. But for stores, it's been a venture of the last, say, I'd average maybe 3 years right now. The age of a store for the most part
yeah.
on a
That's when
state
it really
level,
started to
maybe even
explode.
lower to 2
About
now because
2017,
Yeah, 'cause we're
2016 is when it first started to explode, I think.
Right.
but there's still a lot of stores being introduced too
Oh,
at this
yeah.
point, and
They can't keep
I mean
up
it keeps
with it.
happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're good.
So
Yeah, it's going to be a ton.
And so, you know what's funny? Because we're always going to OMP telling them, don't do this, you'll help the black market, and don't do this, you know, you raise the prices too high, you'll scare away the white market.
Yep.
You know, we try to guide them in the right way and explain to them, and they just don't hear us, I guess. But, you know, what's going to be coming in the future is I think we're going to be seeing a situation where they're gonna try to outprice everything. We're gonna tell them you're gonna screw it up. The black market's gonna come take over again, and then what's gonna happen is something they didn't expect. Like they think the black market is gonna come in the form of people dealing on the street corners or whatever, and you know things like that. But I think instead what they're gonna see is that it's gonna come in the form of people just saying, "Fuck it, I'm gonna open my store. Fuck the license. Fuck the permit. Fuck everything." Because that's what's going on everywhere else. In Toronto, they can't
yeah.
shut them down fast enough. In fucking California, like LA, they're like, in a year's time, they shut down like 400 stores or something. And
they
it's not
just-
because, and you know what are they getting them for? Because they have no license, no nothing. They don't have a tax ID, they don't have anything. They're just doing everything like screw it. And so it's making a serious mess of everything. And so they found this fast track way to process these guys, but it's not spanking them hard enough because they're just going down the road, and a month later they're setting up another storefront with the same stupid green cross or whatever in the front. And this is a real problem in California. It's happening in Canada. And if
you
they
think it could happen here?
Oh, absolutely. The overregulation is going. If they try to crank medical up to the level of where adult use is,
Yeah.
they are inevitably
Gonna
going
lose
to
a
open
lot.
up
Gonna
that
lose
black
a lot.
market, and it won't be a black market. It'll be like a gray market because, like I said, they're going to have stores. They're going to have, you know,
Right. Delivery services.
Exactly, the delivery services, and that's who they're gonna find themselves running around playing, business cops or whatever the hell they're gonna be, I guess, trying to shut down the ones without the permits and keep the ones up that are running. And I just think it's gonna, all this can be easily avoided if they just listen to us.
A couple of
Basically,
A little less greed.
instead of this listening to the
A
lobbyists,
couple-
try
Right.
listen to the real people in the industry that made that $111 million number go crazy and created 300 storefronts in like literally a couple, 2 or 3 years. And how about listening to us for once? Because we're the driving.
Colorado is doing very well with their medical program for a long for the short and brief period of time it had existed. But I think it had a really good name before that, though. I mean, it was a strong underground business that a lot of people in Colorado were excelling at or just investing in. And then when they changed regulations, when corporate cannabis came in and changed state rules and regulations on them, well, Patrick from Game Bred Genetics was a guest. He was there in Colorado during that period of time, and he said they changed it from 500 square feet to 500 cubic feet, which meant you couldn't expand,
walls
you couldn't
anymore.
grow. Yeah, you were
You couldn't grow with 25-foot ceilings anymore.
no, no, it was too much already. Right. So that changed. That basically led to the extinction of caregivers, and so I think those are things we need to guard against.
And then,
and if we have representation, if we have people fighting for the cannabis industry,
And the thing that happens after that a lot of people don't realize, it's like first they came for the black people, then they came for the Jewish people, then they came for me or whatever. That's what's going to happen, because next they're going to come for the home grows, like as a patient. Oh, now you can't, or maybe as adult use program. They already cut it down from 6 plants to 3 plants.
Right.
They're going to cut that thing down to 0. Then they're going to go to the patients and say, okay, you guys can't grow 6 plants anymore. That's illegal. And then once they get rid of that, now they've forced everybody to become a consumer, whether you like it or not. And that's the ultimate goal.
would they
is-
be able to enforce that? I mean, like we
mean,
talk
I
about how
wouldn't
they'd
wanna
rather
be-
deal with a
How does that
deal
work?
with a dozen entities.
Well, this is
Well,
just
now
the-
you're working
this
with
is the
tens of
mentality of these
thousands.
people, though. They just think they can regulate anything, and it's going to just work out that way, and they're going to get their end result, and it's
Being in the cannabis industry, I'd take that as a total bluff in the sense of trying to enforce, but
right.
it's because we have always kind of seen an enforcement of that level as a bluff,
Right.
anyways.
Kind of a
Yeah.
stupid ass bluff, because it's almost like it shows their true colors. Yeah, that's completely unenforceable.
No, but it does go there. Yeah, I mean,
it's like,
you're,
oh,
you're
like, look,
scared out.
this is what we want you to do. Like, we want to have complete control of you. No way to actually do it. So it's like it doesn't actually solve anything. So
Well,
there really
you
is,
scare
it's
a
like
lot
kind
of
of
people. You scare a lot of people.
Yeah, there's
out
a lot
of
of people
that, though.
afraid.
A lot
you'd
of
scare
states
people
that
out
have
with
adult use programs don't allow home grows, personal grows or whatever. So that's, we're kind of unique. And I can't think of what states allow it and what states don't, but the majority don't, as far as I recall. And that's a problem, because that makes us the minority.
The next one on the list.
We're
next
the
one.
low-hanging fruit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we gotta be,
I
we gotta have a
suppose if we
watchful
become
eye.
somebody's agenda, then certainly we'd be up for it. But yeah, again,
gotta-
another thing, if we can be 10, 15 years from now, Mainers can grow. I think we'll have
made
won
it.
some
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of battle.
Right.
Oh,
there
yeah.
down
But I
the
mean,
road.
Maine's really known for small this. Hey, let's go to Maine. They got little restaurants. They have
Small.
craft beer places. Oh, they have this pottery shop. They have this thing. People don't go to Maine like in other cities where they go to some giant mall so they can go get their whatever their Danish things and their
Yeah.
and their farmed ham places, and they live like a whole life of McDonald's consumption. It's got to be a brand name. They don't come to Maine to go to Red Lobster.
No.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn cannabis into the Red Lobster.
Yeah, that's
Because the
a
state's
great-
lazy.
That's a
Like
great
I said,
analogy.
they're lazy. They want one check.
That's a great way
They
we
want
can sell
one
it to
check.
Augusta, too. We can bring that to Augusta and say, okay, how many of you would go get your lobster at Red Lobster? Exactly. Now you know how we feel when these pricks come up from Massachusetts and try to make their cannabis be the forced marketed item, and using you guys as a tool to force it on us all.
Yeah.
Because that's reality. I mean, that just
Right.
breaks it down in a nutshell. Nobody goes to Red Lobster to get their damn lobster in Maine. It's a failed business plan.
Right.
And these idiots are going to keep going and going until they've spent all their money, and they got unlimited funds. So it's like,
So do they give you time when you go up to Augusta to speak? Like, do
Oh,
you
yeah.
ever? And so you have. And
every citizen is allowed 3 minutes at a public hearing. So,
If you bring enough of your friends.
And if you bring a lot of people, that's a lot of minutes. And if you guys all have, the same kind of focused plan, you can send a very loud message. And what's cool is if you give a really good testimony or something, then a lot of times they will ask you a follow-up question. And once they ask you a follow-up question, you got unlimited time after that.
Oh, really?
It's a 3-minute clock for your testimony. So you're like racing to say everything you can say. And then after they say, okay, any questions? And then the senators and reps all have a chance to ask you a question if they want. And so if you get 2 or 3 questions, you hit a nerve. You're making change, and it's a really cool feeling because you're like, shit, I just made a difference. And then you just sit there and you wait for them until after the meeting's over, and then you catch them out in the hallway and you follow up with them, and you're like, hey, I'll send you an email, let's follow up.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, a lot of these people are pretty accessible. They're pretty open, and I think a lot of them have pride in their job and what they do, try to represent the people properly.
do you make a lot of money doing that or no? What's like the house like? Is it? It's not much pay.
No.
Oh, to be a
for the
representative or
position,
senator?
No,
Yeah, it's a
not.
joke.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like
It's
12
not really-
grand. State reps like
Yeah.
12,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what. That's
yeah,
what I
and
thought.
you get like a little bit of mileage money or something,
Right.
if you depending on how far away you are from Augusta. But it's a joke, and
And I'm donating my salary.
Hell, oh, you are?
Just so everybody knows here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I am. I'm donating to 4 different charities that impact District 60. So I'm working for free.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
It's public service, so that's what
You're actually
what public
giving
service
back.
is.
You're giving. You're carbon negative or something.
Yeah. I'm not negative. I'm positive. brother.
Positive, yeah, whatever it is. That's what I meant to say.
Guys, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast this afternoon. We really appreciate your time. We enjoyed it very much. Evan, anything you want to add?
No, yeah. Sorry for chomping into the mic once in a while. But thanks for coming by.
It brings it down
Guys,
to a
anything
real
you
level.
want to say?
You know?
Party? Anything?
No, just thank you for having me, and thank you, Dawson, for coming over, man.
Yeah,
Doing
thanks
your
for
thing.
having me, guys. And just one more plug if I
Sure,
can.
sure.
Everybody vote for in Lewiston, District 60, House District. We need John Morrison. Please consider giving him your vote and spread the word.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Best to you.